So U.S. President Donald Trump has now warned that the clock is ticking for Iran to make a peace deal and threatened Tehran that there won't be anything left of them if an acceptable deal is not proposed. For a closer look at the latest situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Dr. Hassan Geon, visiting professor at the Institute of Middle East Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Geon, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So Trump has threatened consequences for Iran if its leaders don't act quickly. This comes after he earlier warned that Tehran it'll have a very bad time if a peace deal is not reached. So will they be able to agree on a deal in the near future?
Yeah, I think, of course, the deal is very possible but not in the near future. It's probably a full peace deal is not on the table for a near future. What is more realistic is phased or limited de-escalation package, partial reopening of Hormuz, or some restraint on attacks, and continued negotiations through Pakistan or other mediators. The problem here is both parties are in an urgent need for a deal, actually, but neither side wants to look defeated. Iran wants to represent the outcome as a recognition of its rights on the regional status, and and United States also wants to appear like it has forced Iran militarily to surrender. So those two narratives are very difficult to combine. Trump's warning that Iran will have a very bad time increases pressure, but it also makes compromise harder because Trump cannot appear domestically surrendering. Iranian leaders cannot easily accept terms that looks like surrender after the war has been framed domestically as a resistance. Therefore, the near-term possibility is a narrow agreement, grand bargain, not a grand bargain deal. The key question here is whether Washington is willing to accept the sequencing, first managing Hormuz, then nuclear restrictions, and then sanction relief and so on.
I see. And Iran says it will soon reveal its plan to manage traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, including the charging of tolls. And it also says Iran remains ready to sort of resume direct military conflict with the U.S. if negotiations fail. So what's Iran's strategy here, and where is this war heading?
Iran's strategy is not simply to close the Strait of Hormuz. It is trying to turn this Strait of Hormuz issue into a bargaining system by announcing a traffic management plan, charging tolls, and distinguishing between hostile ships and cooperating ships. Tehran is trying to convert geography into a political leverage system. This is why the toll issue is important. It's not just about collecting money. It's about forcing shipping companies and Asian importers and Gulf states and European governments to deal with Iran directly. Tehran wants to show that no settlement is possible without Iranian consent over Hormuz. At the same time, Iran is sending a military signal. Negotiations are not acceptable, but negotiation is acceptable, but surrender is not. When Iran says it's ready to resume direct conflict with the United States, it's trying to say that economic pressure is not working. So the war is heading toward the dangerous no war but no peace phase. Limited diplomacy and selective escalation is very big risk for miscalculation in the area. So most likely path is not a quick regional peace, but a fragile bargain around Hormuz first, and then other issues can be followed after that.
And after the summit in Beijing, Trump claimed that she offered to help negotiate an end to the conflict and that China would not provide military equipment to Tehran. How might this change the course of this war?
Of course, China's involvement could change the war, but only if Beijing moves from symbolic diplomacy to real pressure. China has leverage because it is a major buyer of Iranian oil, and it has direct interest in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. If President Xi Jinping is genuinely signaling to Tehran that China will not provide military equipment and wants the strait opened, that weakens Iran's confidence that it can rely on a great power protection. But it also gives Trump a diplomatic channel that it does not depend only on military threats. But China will not act as an American subcontractor in this case. Beijing will use the crisis to increase its own diplomatic values. China's side has been much more cautious than Trump's public claims suggest. And this big, broad summit between President Trump and President Xi Jinping has actually produced limited concrete outcomes. China may help reduce escalation, but it's likely demand political space in return, like in the case of Taiwan and the trade tariffs, and also U.S. pressure in Asia in general. So China's role is stabilizing, but not actually decisive. It can help create diplomatic off-ramp to both sides. It cannot impose settlement on these war issues unless the United States and Iran decide that the cost of war is much greater than diplomacy.
And as for the conflict with Hezbollah, Israel and Lebanon agreed to extend the ceasefire by 45 days despite their recent flare-up in violence. So will Israel abide by a deal with Iran if Trump can secure a deal?
About Israel, it's very difficult to say that it can abide by any deal. Israel may formally accept a US-backed deal, but it will not treat it as a permanent restraint. If it believes Iran or its allies like Hezbollah are rebuilding military capacities, the Lebanon case is very enlightening here. Israel and Lebanon agreed to extend the ceasefire, but Israel continues strikes on southern Lebanon, claiming that it was targeting Hezbollah's infrastructure. So that shows Israel's pattern. It may accept a ceasefire framework, but it preserves freedom of action against what it defines as imminent threats. So, therefore, if Trump secures a deal with Iran, Israel compliance will depend on three things, actually, restriction on strict verification on nuclear issues and limits on Iran missiles and the nuclear infrastructure, and also great constraints on Iran's proxy allies in the area, such as Hezbollah. If the deal only reopens Hormuz while leaving Iran's regional network untouched, Israel will probably think this deal is incomplete. In that case, Israel may avoid openly breaking with Washington, but it could continue selective strikes on Lebanon or Syria, or some covert operations or pressure. I guess that Israel will abide by the deal politically, but if Washington guarantees full security concerns. But operationally, Israel will insist on the right to act in case of any imminent threats.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Geon, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a